This is a Radical Rant podcast. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Radical Rant podcast. This being what is going to be, I should say, a revolutionary podcast today as we go through AEW Revolution as well as a little bit of Dynamite. Today, we are here with just Liam. Joe is playing the role of Chris Statlander being sick today, but for the time being, we're going to push on as we can. So how you doing, Liam?
We're saying a prayer for his recovery. I'm doing fantastic, Adam, especially after last night. This is very cool. You've been doing the Radical Wrestling podcast for a long time, but I think this is the first time since we've come on as co-hosts where we get to break down a pay-per-view the day after. So I'm very excited.
It's definitely going to be very fun to talk about, especially with a show that it has been as good as Revolution. I mean, but we'll get into it in full in a minute here, but I can say straight up, without even thinking about it, this is definitely the best pay-per-view they've put on, without question.
I think from beginning to end, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, and certainly because I watched it with a bunch of people. It was like 8 or 9 of us watching, and it was a blast. You know, I had half of us really understood wrestling and kept up, and the other half were completely new to it, and both sides got equal amounts of enjoyment from it. Although I think specifically the Pac versus Orange Cassidy match was very universal, but as a whole, the show itself was just an absolute parade of fun, just endless amounts of entertainment.
Yeah, and you know, you got to see some very cool things, right? 2 debuts, Jake Hager's debut, Orange Cassidy's debut, 3 title matches. It was, big blow-offs to feuds, although, you know, I don't think that the MJF Cody thing is necessarily over, but we'll talk about that. But, you know, I think you're right. I was trying to rack my brain, having now watched All Out in full gear. I think this was definitely the most complete thing they've put together, and there's a lot of people I saw online echoing that sentiment, and then there's a lot of people, and obviously we'll get to it in a couple minutes, but saying that was one of the best tag matches that they'd ever seen.
Absolutely.
As well.
But first, since, you know, obviously we want to talk about how Kenny stole the show last night, Kenny has quite possibly put on 2 Match of the Year matches in the same week.
Yeah, easily. And, you know, that's probably it's a bit of a caveat because it was a half an hour as opposed to a full hour, but that's the second best Iron Man match I've ever seen, other than Lesnar against Kurt Angle.
Oh, man, there was... Actually, I don't even think it was an Iron Man match. No, I'm sorry, I'm mixing stuff up. I'm just thinking the one... Omega Okada match that went the full 60 minutes without a fall, and then I realized, wait, no, that was just a match.
Yeah. Well, we know that Kenny can pace himself.
Yeah, no kidding.
And Pac is no slouch himself. And no, that was a great match. They'd been building to it for months. Pac has done some of the best heel work in the entire company, cutting promos for it, attacking Kenny's friends, setting him up for it, and then all roads led to this on Kansas City. Good on AEW for putting on a match of that quality, free on television. You know, I know when you're a new company, you're still trying to bring people in, and, you know, that kind of quality wrestling, the two of the best guys in your company, 2 of the best guys in the world, just absolutely killing each other for 30 minutes. And like I was saying to you before we started, like one of my favorite things, the intentional DQ. He hits him with the chair just to soften him up was fantastic.
Well, and to think that that's the first DQ they've ever had, and it's actually a strategic DQ rather than being like a fuck finish or a cowardly DQ or somebody interfering. No, it was straight up. No, he did that intentionally because he wanted to just completely decimate Kenny.
Yeah, and that was great. He was working the head and he was working the shoulders, and then obviously we saw that last night because Kenny had the shoulders taped up. Then at the end of the match, he loses his shit and he knocks out the referee. When he's not counting the falls, Aubrey has to run out. They have to go to overtime to do the 1-1 finish. And then Kenny hits the one-winged angel and goes over the top. And that was the only problem I had with the whole thing. I think Pac needed the win more than Kenny did because Kenny's doing most of his work in the tag division. And he's hot enough that I think he could have taken, you know, like Pac has been red hot as a heel. And I think that like it was more important for him to put the cherry on the top of that Sunday than it was for Kenny, especially because if one of them has the belt, you know, further down the road, I'm sure their paths will cross again.
Absolutely. I mean, the crowd in Kansas City for the show, too, was just fantastic.
Super hot.
They were way into the show, and it showed. Like, there wasn't a dry moment during that match, too. They were all invested. They were all paying attention. They were reacting as they should. rather than what you expect from some crowds. I mean, again, to take a bad shot at a WWE crowd, you know, the Corpus Christi crowd, that would always just be sitting on their knees, or sitting on their hands, I should say, the entire time. So for Kansas City to really wake up for what might actually be one of the best matches AEW has put on, it's maybe even the best match they put on television, it really does ramp up this match even higher than obviously it already was.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think that, he did that 3 days before he put on the match he did last night. Really speaks to how, I understand why people say that there are a lot of people he's the pick for best wrestler in the world, because god damn is he talented.
Well, and geez, and some of the stuff he took, like obviously he took the chair shots, he took a black arrow, took a falcon arrow to the outside, and then a shooting star through a table. So it's not like the guy had like a soft 30-minute Iron Man match. No, he was taking a lot of heavy shit.
And then they had the brutalizer locked in for an entire 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Right before their time expired. Yeah, no, it was nuts. It was, and like I was happy. I think you and I were talking about it. Everyone thought it might be the main event, which would have paced the show a bit differently, because you would have had to kind of rush those other segments to get to the last half hour. It was awesome that it kicked off the show.
Yeah,
right into it.
No commercial breaks, so it just makes it that much better. And then to honestly end it with Tony interviewing Pac and Orange Cassidy coming in, and you're like, wait, where are you going with this?
Yeah, so apparently they have crossed paths on the backstage segments before.
Oh, they have.
I saw that on the video, and I forgot that. Right?
You just don't.
So I did think it was kind of random.
I realized it, but I sat there and like for that brief moment before they officially announced it later in the show, I'm just like, wait, are they gonna have those two go at it? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I must say I lost my shit when they announced that in the ring after the Best Friends match. I was like, I texted you and Joe in the chat, and I was like, oh my god, they're finally going to put him on pay-per-view. And you know what? 3 days notice, didn't matter. Didn't need a build. People were so excited for it. And that was the best when Chuck Taylor was like, and this time, he's going to try. And the whole, like you said, the whole Kansas City crowd leans into it, starts chanting it. And that was a great match, actually, right before that, between the Best Friends and the Butcher and the Blade.
That it was, for sure.
One of the other things on Dynamite that I really liked, and the women's four-way match was good too. But yeah, no, I thought that was a good. The Best Friends Butcher and Blade tag match was stiff, and it was a lot of good moves and physical, not the prettiest offense you'd ever see, but physical. And you could tell the two teams didn't like each other. And Orange Cassidy got some measure of revenge by stealing the bunny ears.
Well, yeah, but she took the shades first. It was only fair.
I wish that they had gone over, but that's because I'm biased and I like them as a team.
What, the Butcher and the Blade?
The Butcher and the Blade, yeah. But it was a good wrestling match.
Yeah, I mean there was some decent match on the show as well. I mean, obviously we had Jurassic Express in the Inner Circle. I was actually surprised that the Jurassic Express got the pin. I figured it was going to be an Inner Circle win going into Dynamite or to Revolution, especially with Sammy. But I mean, Darby obviously.
On the card.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, that's what I was going to say, is that, yeah, the Inner Circle guys were on the card. Well, Santana and Ortiz were, but Sammy was, whereas Jurassic Express, as we saw last night, was just sitting in the crowd.
I was really upset with that, too, because I wanted Marco to be sitting there with like a shit ton of popcorn just stuffing his face. If they were going to have him in the crowd, I wanted them just to go a little more wacky with it.
Yeah. And then, of course, they did something very cool. The Painmaker Posse, the Solidarity entrance for the weigh-in.
Oh, yeah. Well, we'll
good
get to
segment.
That. We'll
Intense,
definitely get to that.
Jericho took a headbutt right to the face and split it. Split him open right under the eye that he needs stitches for.
Oh yeah, and we'll get to that as we get down the card here. Just to finish off with the Jurassic Express Inner Circle match, Sammy took another crazy fucking bump. He died to triple kicks and a vertebreaker, which apparently they don't do destroyers as much. But now all of a sudden I've seen 2 vertebreakers in the last week, and I'm like, okay guys, can we try not to kill people's necks, please?
Well, especially Sammy's neck, which has had a rough couple of weeks.
Yeah, and then Marco nearly got his neck fucked up too, because Luchasaurus went to do a moonsault to the outside, and he hit Pride and Powerful, but because the guy's so fucking huge, Marco didn't get out of the way, so he kind of nailed him in the back of the head on the way down.
Yeah, that's a big dude to have dropping in on you at that velocity.
But yeah, Darby distracting Sammy, the Jurassic Express actually get the win. Like you said, Best Friends took out Butcher and the Blade, which I was also surprised by. I figured going into OC, Pac would have gotten involved somewhere just to get some vengeance, but I guess not. I was really surprised with the women's four-way that Shida won because I figured Yuka got so over in that match that they probably could, even if it wasn't planned, I would have just called an audible and had her win. Because good lord, if Riho isn't going to be around all the time, Yuka is going to become the number 2 for all the guys to fawn over now because there's another tiny Japanese girl for him.
Yeah, and a better wrestler than Riho, really. Like, she's crazy athletic. It's amazing. I have no idea why they kept her dormant for 6 months, unless it was contractual obligations or whatever. But,
I figure it might have been that.
She's come back with a force. Like, she had a great match with Britt Baker, and then another one in between that, and then she was phenomenal in this match.
I mean, good lord, her music. Oh my god. Yeah. Like, oh my god, it's so fucking anime. It's like, how can I not like you?
Having Excalibur explain her gimmick to Jim Ross was another highlight.
Yeah. So far in the couple of weeks they've had to sell her, it's just basically been like, look, Japan. Like, honestly, that's all we got. Japan.
Yeah. It's anime. She's a genie. What can I tell you?
And most wrestling fans, especially ones familiar with Japanese culture, are just like, yeah, say no more. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, if you know, you know, and if you don't, it's what it is. But she's entertaining, both as a personality and she's a good wrestler. So I like that Shida won this. I want Shida to keep rolling with the momentum of being a number 1 contender type figure, even though I know that technically Big Swole kind of came out and pushed on that last week. But
that was the thing Shida, too. Like Shanna obviously is the one you least expect to win, but when you're doing the math, like, okay, Swole and Statlander had the standoff. Yuka's kind of been this new thing coming back in, so you figured those two are the ones. Like Shida, you're not surprised that she won in kayfabe terms, but in a sense of like what you're thinking in terms of who's been prominent for a little bit, you'd figure Sheeta's not one of the ones that would actually get that win.
I don't know. I think she's been doing the most consistent work in that division. I know we talked a lot about that on our New Year's show, our first one back in the new year or our year-end show, where we all picked her as kind of the person we thought had done the best in the division. I think if her versus Nyla match one-on-one would be very good, and I'm hoping that's where we're going in the not-too-distant future.
I would assume yes, if not Swole getting crack first. Maybe Hishida is who they aim for Double or Nothing. Who knows? I mean, obviously you've seen how well they've burned guys getting their title shot as they did with Moxley and Jericho, which we'll obviously get into further down the card. But I didn't mind the match itself. Like, everything was fine. The best part was just the beginning of the match where everybody started fighting except nobody went after Yuka, so she's standing in the corner pouting because she's like, why wouldn't anyone fight me?
Yeah.
But otherwise, they continue to Dark Order stuff. They intentionally mentioned the word obsolete in the promo, which I keep thinking, okay, are you being coy or is that actually completely intentional and this is what the story is? Because you always have to sit there and think, are they doing it because they're trolling or are they actually doing it as to leave a sign? But it seems so obvious of a sign that it's like, is it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, like until last night, I think we could have said, well, we couldn't have said anything for sure, but we would have thought it was just trolling. We're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here, but I don't think I'm telling tales out of school to say that the Exalted One did not show up last night. So
I
mean,
fact that
it could be Matt Hardy. Yeah. Someone wearing a robe did, but
it wasn't Vince McMahon. That's all that mattered.
I made that joke before the person in the robe came out, and then I was like, but. So it could be Matt Hardy because now his contract's going to expire this week, and that is very much still in play at this point.
I'm basically assuming that we will see the Exalted One on Dynamite. That's my thought process now.
Yes. Well, they've been saying for a week that he's near, right?
Yeah, I thought it would be last night. You're not going to say he's near, and like 2 months from now it happens.
Yeah. near being subjective.
Well, I mean, time is linear and can go at whatever speed it wants, but patience can only go so far when it comes to fans. So.
Yeah, exactly, especially when it comes to wrestling fans.
We also got that interview with the Bucks and Hangman and Page where there is a lot of friction being built. You can tell that somebody is probably turning heel, and as we got to the match, we got a little bit deeper into it. The only thing that I really liked is that the Bucks brought up how, we're the ones that brought you out of being a jobber in Ring of Honor into the Bullet Club, and you became somebody. And Page got all really salty about it and just left. And I like that stuff. That again, it's taking history, again, something WWE doesn't like to do. It's taking things that if you pay attention and you remember shit, it comes back and you can call back to it and people are like, yeah, I know that. I remember that.
Yeah, and even for someone like me who, like I know they had a whole history in Japan and the Bullet Club and Ring of Honor and the other places they went. I'm not as familiar with it, but like you can tell them being the elite as a concept, even over the last year, is helpful in informing that and the narrative structure that they're kind of breaking apart. And I like that, yeah, Paige is like, I don't need you, for whatever they did to get him there. He's the champion now. He's been putting in the work, and I do like. Yeah, they're the champs. The Bucks aren't, right. They got it done against SCU. The Bucks couldn't, and it was a good build for sure. JR, like those JR interviews are always gold. He's always able to. Obviously, that one requires a bit more scripting than some of the other ones, but they always get a lot out of those segments.
Absolutely. We got a quick thing saying that Lance Archer is coming next week, which I'm just curious to see because there's more big guys because we know that there's a pretty good chance that we're going to see Brody Lee back soon. Obviously, with guys like Hager now starting to have a thing, Jeff Cobb maybe being a part-time guy, Brian Cage being signed reportedly. So it brings the chance that we're going to finally start seeing some real hard-hitting action too that isn't just a lot of high-flying, and that always makes me excited.
Yeah, I mean, it would be tough for Archer to come in and assert himself in the heavyweight title picture right away, but at the same time, he and Moxley have history because they just had a big match in Japan like 2 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
So you never know. Well, and like you will have this discussion after we talk about the main event from the pay-per-view, but I'm interested to see, obviously there might be a rematch of last night on television at some point in the not too distant future, but I'm interested to see where the title picture goes from here.
Yeah. And then speaking of the title match, we had before the weigh-in, like you said, Jericho took a sweet-ass time. Moxley was just like, all business. Like, here's my weight. Now let's get the fuck going. Jericho never actually got weighed. He just kept talking shit. He was calling Patrick Mahomes a piece of shit, although I think he said the wrong name.
He did. He gave the wrong first name. I saw that.
Eventually, like you said, Moxley busted him open with a headbutt. Inner Circle basically take him out. Dustin comes in to at least take one of them out, dealing with Jake Hager, brawling to the back, made JR flip out because they kept taking out the damn Dippin' Dots.
Dippin' Dots didn't do anything to anybody.
I fucking died. Oh my god, that was so funny. And that's the kind of shit.
It's good.
That,
it's a running bit.
You gotta love JR for that stuff because even though he is prone to making mistakes now, he knows when it's time to just ramp up for no reason and make the most simple things seem so much more big a deal.
Yeah, but I just like that as writing, that it's a running gag, that the different dots come back into play again, right?
Yep.
It's good comedic writing.
Yeah, otherwise, Darby coming in for Sammy as well, and then finally, Moxley still trying to get in there, and eventually just gets Juice Effects, hits his own paradigm shift on Moxley on the scale, and that's how he ended the go-home show of Dynamite, which was also a very good show.
Yeah, and we've seen that ending before, WWE style, where a bunch of the people that are in the main events or the card matches blow up at the end. But I thought it was well done, and the weigh-in was a good concept. And like I said, I loved the Painmaker posse and them all coming out together wearing the matching jackets.
Yep.
It was stylized enough to feel unique.
I mean, anytime the Jericho can look like another asshole having a stupid name on a jacket, he'll take. Otherwise, I guess we'll just bring up Revolution now. So, like we said at the top, all in all, unbelievable pay-per-view. So I've been watching since the very beginning of AEW, and Double or Nothing is definitely the benchmark for me. That's where the bar is, because I guess first time, you get a lot more excitement going in. Fyter Fest, Fight for the Fallen, All Out Full Gear, all of them still good shows in one way or another. But then Revolution just came in, and they did exactly what the title of the show is. They just caused a revolution, because right before, the WWE has the Super Show where people are fucking furious about it. So AEW just walks in and be like, all right, we got this. And they delivered a fantastic show from top to bottom, other than, in my opinion, one match on the card. And we'll get to that down the line. But what do you think there, Liam, about the show as a whole?
Yeah, no, I was thoroughly enthralled last night. Like you, I had friends over watching it, and they're more of a WWE heavy crowd. That's what they watch on a more consistent basis. And they were blown away. They were super impressed by it. Some of these people they have familiarity with just as wrestling fans, but like they popped really hard for the Orange Cassidy thing. They lost their minds at the tag match. I agree with you. I didn't get to watch Double or Nothing live when it happened in May, but having watched it as a show, obviously one of the stronger outputs with the Omega Jericho and with brother versus brother. But yeah, no, I think from like top to bottom in terms of quality of match, every step of the way, this, you're right, is probably the best show that they've put on.
Yep. So we'll start right from the top. The buy-in, we had the Dark Order going up against SCU. I don't really have too much to say about the match as a whole, other than the fact that I don't like how it ended, because we've seen Scorpio Sky go toe-to-toe with Chris Jericho, and he got taken out with a punch to the back of the head.
Yeah. It was kind of, well, and this was kind of thrust upon us pretty late in the game. They announced that this was going to happen on Twitter. I don't think it damages the teams too much one way or another.
It's one of those things where you just figure like they could have just done the fatality. Like all they had to do was take out Kazarian for another 5 seconds, and that would have been fine.
Yeah, and hit your finishing move or do something like that. But I'm glad that I think the Dark Order thing has regained momentum.
It absolutely.
Because I know a lot of people online were shitting on it at Christmas when they did the big beat 'em up on the last Dynamite of the year. I think it's really kind of, the promos have been smoother and they've been more focused in picking their targets. Obviously, they focused pretty heavily on SCU and the will they, won't they with Christopher Daniels. So no, this was good. I mean, like, and you needed to have something on the buy-in. So I thought this was a pretty quality tag team match. And then, of course, as we were saying, there was the tease for the Exalted one.
Well, I mean, that's going to be the key thing for the Dark Order, like you were saying about them getting shit on a lot. If the Exalted one works, they can go as far as they can go. They will go as far as they want to. If the Exalted one ends up being a letdown, or if it just doesn't work, then that is going to kill them. That's the reality that they're at. If it works, it will work amazingly well. If it doesn't work, that might actually be the last straw on them.
Yeah, and I don't know how you reorient those guys, because the interesting thing is that Grayson and Uno were the Super Smash Brothers on the indies for years, and they were kind of like video game guys, and then they made this dark turn, I believe, that became the Dark Order, and Uno became Evil Uno as opposed to Player Uno before AEW formed. So this was something that they had already done prior to the introduction of the company, but I don't know what the next move for them would be if this stalls out.
Yeah, I mean, this is something you could have a solution for if they were doing this gimmick for a couple of years, but if they fail it right off the bat, like a Nightmare Collective similar situation, then it's like, shit, what do you do? But otherwise, the Exalted one did come out, or at least we thought the Exalted one came out, except it was Christopher Daniels, and we realized that it was a joke because he was still in the same clothes he came out to the interview. If he had come out with Fallen Angel paint, we would have thought, oh shit.
Yeah, exactly, because he's still wearing an SCU t-shirt. That's a good point. I didn't think about that, actually. But no, there was never a moment where I thought Daniels was with them. You knew it was kind of... This is funny, because this is the second pay-per-view in a row where he's done this. He's come out in disguise and then ambushed whoever his team was against, because obviously he came out in the Penta makeup at the last pay-per-view. But yeah. I like this. I think that SCU is still good as a three-man team. I don't think there's a need to break them up. I'm glad that he kind of got a measure of redemption, because obviously they were telegraphing before the match that Kazarian and Sky don't trust him as much anymore with everything that's been going on.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, otherwise, like it was an okay match. It was an okay match.
Yeah, it enticed you in. If you were watching it, would it convince you to buy the pay-per-view? I don't know, but I mean, like for me, it was a nice little place setter, as I was quite literally getting all the food out and cracking a beer. It was a nice way to kind of ease into the show.
Sure. But the first match on the card, and one of the very few problems I'll have with the entire show, is they opened up with Hager and Dustin Rhodes. Now, as a match, I didn't hate the match. I don't think this should have been the opener, though.
No? Why is that?
I don't think that this was the kind of match that got the fans going. Like, the first little bit, it got them going, but then it slowed down, and I'm like, man, you should have put Darby and Sammy, especially now after watching the match after that. Yeah, no, Darby and Sammy should have opened up, because they were going hard and fast right away, and probably could have gotten the fans, like, really going at the start.
For sure, yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing, is that, Darby's 22 years old, Sammy's 26 years old, versus Hager's in his mid-30s and Dustin's 50. And also, Hager hasn't worked a proper wrestling match probably since he was in Lucha Underground, so kind of easing back in. But I liked this match. It was physical. It was, it had a good beginning. I liked Hager's entrance music. I liked that he got heat by making out with his wife. I liked that. I liked his ring attire that had like the Caesar's Palace kind of black and gold. And he was pretty athletic. There were some good spots. I mean, obviously he had the big clothesline. He did the big drop off the top. Dustin hit a destroyer, not the best one he's ever hit, but Hager's also 6'7", so it's tough to flip yourself over him. Dustin had the spot where he made out with Hager's wife, which he blocked the punch.
That was funny. And you could see her in the corner, like, redoing her makeup, like, out in the crowd still.
And, and then he locked on the good finish, the low blow in the corner, and then he locked down that good-looking submission hold that he
I think it's a rear naked choke if I'm not mistaken, but it looked like, I think a rear naked choke is usually with two hands, so I wonder if it's a different thing because it was like a one-arm choke.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. But per the commentary, and I'm going off this because I haven't seen Hager in Bellator, but apparently he does use that move in Bellator, so that's kind of good for consistency.
Yeah.
And the one other spot that was before that was when he had Dustin in the ankle lock, and then he rolled to the ropes on the other side. That was pretty good.
Mm-hmm. The one thing that was freaking me out in the entrance, I'm like, okay, just come out with fight shorts. And then I looked at what he had. I'm like, okay, no, that looks like shorts. And then as it got closer, I'm like, wait, that looks a lot like the fucking singlet he used to wear when he was in WWE. I'm like, don't you tell me he wore the fucking singlet. Then he took the hoodie off. I'm like, oh, okay. Because I'm thinking, man, if he comes out in a singlet on his first match, I'm like, he's fucking dead. He's dead because he'll look like a dumbass again.
Yeah. No, I think that, like we were saying last week when we were recording, once you've gone MMA, like you're always going to go the fight shorts. Brock did it. He did it. If CM Punk ever comes back, he'll probably do it.
Well, not to mention, I don't know if CM Punk even himself would think he looked that good in a Speedo again now.
Yeah, that's right. Well, he's also in his early 40s now, so that might factor into it too. Oh, the one other spot I wanted to say was right at the beginning of this match. Dustin's wearing the Jericho's bitch T-shirt, and you catch Hager on the camera like, you motherfucker.
Yeah, and well, again, like, just set the stage. That's the one thing that I will say that at least helped the opener. Is that all my buddies who didn't really watch stuff, the second they saw that, because everybody was paying attention, and they see that he mouthed that, they're like, oh, shit, because, you don't expect, that kind of language on, a wrestling show, because we're so used now to WWE being so PG, right? So
that's right. And then the crowd got into it like in one of the dead spots after he had hit him with the big clothesline on the outside. The crowd started chanting, Jericho's bitch, to piss him off during the dead air. So, like you said, maybe not the hottest start they could have had, but cool to see Jake Hager in the ring again. Hell, I haven't seen him wrestle in 10 years since when he and Jericho had a world championship match.
I mean, hey, it was an old school slobber knocker. You can't complain about that.
No, yeah. And, he looks good, and I'm interested to see where they use him next. I know that they had teased a fight with Luchasaurus at some point, maybe. So
I would hope they take their time and let that stew till Double or Nothing. I really would hope that.
Yeah, but I do hope we get a couple more Hager matches on TV now.
Yeah, I would expect to see a couple, whether it's in tag matches, maybe he does a one on Dark where he just wrecks fucking Brandon Cutler or something.
Yeah, something like that. But I will say, like, that was a cool aspect of the show. It was good to see him debut, and glad that he got the win.
So we got Darby and Sammy up next. Darby did have a little bit of a video intro again, this time him doing, and my friends popped for this too. He laid the skateboard in the ring and did a springboard moonsault from the ropes onto the skateboard. And all my buddies are like, whoa!
Yeah, it wasn't even an edit, because they then edited just panning up to him on the board, but you see in the one shot that he actually stuck the landing with that flip. It was crazy.
Well, you wonder how many takes it might have taken, but for all you know, it could have taken him one because he's that fucking insane that he'd try it 1,000 times before he ever did it on TV, so...
Yeah, and the board, of course, had Sammy written across it. He didn't come out in a body bag, but he didn't have to, and like the crowd was hot for him. They were losing it.
Yep, he quite frankly, aside from Adam Page right now, might actually be the most over guy in the company.
I think so. Like, he's like a genuine star, and this is good because he hasn't had a match in about a month, right? So, and he didn't lose a step. He went right at Sammy from the get-go, didn't even let his music get to the good part, and then dove right through the ropes at him, and it was awesome. They went out into the crowd, brawled around. It
was a good 3 to 5 minutes before the bell even rang because there was so much going on. Like, Sammy finally got the upper hand. He set up that table, hit the 630, which again made my friends pop like a son of a bitch because they've never seen that before.
Yeah. Darby had a bit of a botch on the dive through the ropes when he was on the... He clipped the ropes. But if you were in the crowd, you wouldn't have noticed it. And on TV, he got a bit of him anyway, but it didn't matter. It didn't affect the overall pacing of the match.
Well, I knew that he must have got something of him, but my first thought was, oh shit, don't tell me they just butted heads.
Right, yeah, from a concussion standpoint. No, and then, like you said, like once the match actually got going, like some of the best stuff was on the outside in that 5 to 7 minute period before the bell actually rang. High level offense though. Sammy hit that good looking Spanish fly off the top rope.
Oh yeah, that he almost fell off the fucking ropes doing.
Yeah, that was
Holy
terrifying.
shit. Like the balance you have to have. He was hanging on one foot. I mean, sure, Darby, he might have been hanging on to Darby for a little bit more leverage, but the guy had 1 foot on the rope with his other like dangling in the air, and he managed to keep himself steady.
Darby hit that really good looking shotgun dropkick. The only shotgun dropkick that looks better than that is Pac's, but that's also kind of like a size thing. But like with the intensity that because Darby's obviously not the biggest guy, but he flings himself so hard at people that you believe it. Mm-hmm. Like you said, the crowd was super hot for this. This was great, fast paced. 2 guys that are definite stars in the future of this company, and I think they made the right call with the finish.
Yeah, Darby. I mean, I thought Darby would get a little bit more of a run and gun offense in the ring, but I think because they did so much brawling, they kind of had a justification for it being like, nope, these guys are just killing the shit out of each other. So, Darby didn't do nearly as much of his flipping and diving around the ring as he normally would. But at the end, just knocks Sammy down enough times that he finally gets enough room to hit that coffin drop that he goes like 2/3 of the way across the ring for, which always looks impressive. And yeah, gets the 3 count. That to me should have been the opener. I mean, it's not like the Hager Rhodes match wasn't any good, but this was a match that like by the time that the match was over, everybody was hot and ready for whatever was coming next.
Right, and then I liked at the end that Hager came to make the save and pull Sammy away when Darby was going to attack him with the skateboard for what he did to his throat.
Neck for a neck.
See. Exactly. We'll see if that feud continues, if there's any heat, but that was a good spot too.
Okay, so we're at the point where I don't know if we can talk about what a good spot is in this next match, because there might have been 2,000 of them.
Yeah, that's the thing. This is like literally picking a needle in a haystack for offense. So let's. I'm sure you've got some specifics you want to touch on, and we can. But let's talk about this at a high level for a moment.
Does it make you slightly upset that this match has nothing to do with the Lucha Bros?
No. Weirdly enough,
you can't talk about a shit ton of spots that not being Phoenix related. Does it feel weird?
But it felt like a bit of a gap. But I must say that they certainly made up for it in his absence. And you and I have not talked about the Bucks a lot in a meta concept. I don't have a seething, raging hate on for them like Jim Cornette does. But they're not. They're not favorites of mine, and they're not. They put on good matches, and when they're against actual heels, I think they put on good matches. But this was definitely my favorite match they've put on in the company.
And they've shown too that they can be a bunch of dickheads too. I would not even be surprised if there's actually a heel turn in this entire group of the Elite. That it might even be them.
I thought that was happening last night.
They could pull it off.
I thought they were doing the Bret Hart when he was doing the Northern Lights suplexes to Hangman on the outside, and then they hit the driver on him on the outside, and the fans were booing after. I thought they were doing the WrestleMania 13 full reversal.
I mean, it's possible, but I mean at the same time, their Tease and Page still might turn on him. Kenny might turn on people because he's getting pissed off too. I think that's the best part about this entire match is that the storytelling. You can basically see that no one's hands are clean and everybody is a good guy and a bad guy at the same time because they're all running with their own egos and they're trying to figure shit out.
Yeah, no, that's right. This had a million, like you said, this had a million spots. It also had like a million emotional, but it had such a fluid emotional current to it. It started with a bit of chain wrestling for the first 5 or 6 minutes, and then it really got going when Hangman spit in Matt Jackson's face. And
well, you
were off to the races.
I was listening to Meltzer, and I want to say it was Alvarez when they were talking about the match. And they said that normally if you have a match that goes 30 minutes, because that's about as long as the Omega Page Bucks match went.
He got the pin like less than a minute after they said it had been 30.
Yeah. And I mean, most times in a 30-minute match, you'll have around 20, 22 minutes of action and 8 minutes of filler. And they sat there and be like, I can't think of any spot that you could say was a dead period in that match. It was just 30 minutes of nonstop craziness.
Yeah, like multiple finishers, guys hitting other finishers. Page on 2 separate occasions having a spot where he was just lighting up the Bucks single-handedly. And, we were talking about who the star of this match was. Easily Hangman, and like the crowd felt that. I think Kenny got a bigger pop when he came out.
Oh yeah, but by the end of it was definitely all Page.
Yeah, and they were chanting for him the whole match too, right? Like cowboy shit was being chanted right from the beginning.
That was loud.
Yeah, and it was, I think it was his match. I'm glad that he got the finish. You know what? I know you and I talked about this before. I thought the Bucks were going to win this. I thought this is where they would do the end of the feud. I'm happy they didn't. I think that was great. But like you said, I think this was the best tag team match the company has done to date. I think it might be. I tried to think of a tag team match I've seen that I liked more than this.
Yeah, Alvarez said the same thing. He thought that might have been one of the best tag matches ever. Period.
Yeah. Well, that's high praise coming from those guys because obviously they watch wrestling a lot more intensively than I do. But I'm trying to rack my brain in the 20 years I've watched wrestling. Some of those TLC matches. Benoit,
I can honestly
Jericho.
say the last time I was that invested in a tag team match would have been the match that was Cody and Dustin on WWE taking on the Shield to get their jobs back.
Right.
That's how far I have to go back.
That was an era where I wasn't watching, so that one I can't remember as well. But yeah, for me, it goes back as far as the Edge and Christian era to the time that I've and some of those Lucha Brothers Bucks matches were pretty good too. But no, I think this was, in terms of emotional stakes and in terms of just sheer, anything you'd want from a wrestling match. This had technical style at the beginning. It had the working of injuries. I know we said we were going to touch too much on spots because there's 1,000, but the one right at the beginning where the Jacksons tee up that head scissors and then kneed Kenny off the apron, Jesus, I'd never seen anything like that. That was super impressive.
Yeah, no, the fact that the match was told in many different ways, because at the very beginning, there wasn't a lot of aggression. You saw Kenny, booping his fists with the Bucks, just be like, oh, respect. And then eventually, as it kept getting going and going, and they kept kicking out, you can see both teams just getting so frustrated to the point that eventually Page goes for Matt's injured back, and then eventually Matt has to return the favor because he's like, you know what, fuck this. I'm done playing around. And he started beating the shit out of Kenny's shoulder, which was all taped up. And you saw both sides. Omega's trying to keep Page and look, no, let's just win the match. Don't worry about all this petty shit. And Nick had to do the same for Matt when Matt started going after Kenny's shoulder. I love the fact that they kept playing on it that they didn't want to hurt each other, but by the time we got to the end of the match, no one gave a fuck. They were all there just to beat the other into submission because no one would stay down.
Yeah. And that was the thing. I felt that too. I'm sure you did with your friends. There were so many spots where you thought it would be it, and then there'd be a kick out or there'd be a break, and I was like, come on! But it was great, and you could see it in the audience too, right?
Legitimately, when Page hit the One-Wing Angel, I should have known that someone would kick out, but as soon as I believe it was Nick who kicked out, I legit fell out of my seat and just kind of lied on the floor and just pounded the floor, being like, come on!
Yeah, no, I was right there with you, brother. It was but not in an annoying way, confounding.
No,
you're oh
it's like you're so mentally drained because you're like, I can't take it anymore.
Yeah, no, and I was leading pretty at that point. Like we were saying, I didn't have You and I talked about it. I think we both said that this would probably be the best match on the card, but I wasn't invested in who won it one way or another. But by the end, I was full on rooting for Kenny and.
Well, I had a feeling it would be the best match on the card, but good lord, I didn't think it would be the best match on the card by a country fucking mile.
Yeah, and then I'm glad that, like I said, Page got the finish, and then of course we get to the tease of the potential breakup where it looked like he might hit a buckshot on Kenny.
Well, and they really took their time. I kept sitting there being like, they got to be doing something because this is taking a long time for us to cut to the next video package. Because it took them a while. They were trying to shake hands. Paige just kept staring at him. I'm thinking, okay, they're going to finally hug. Everything's going to be good. And then he was about to leave the ring, and I thought, oh, maybe he's going to come back, do kind of like what Kenny did where he didn't want to deal with Kota Ibushi when they finally got over their shit in New Japan. And then finally left, and then he stopped and put his hands on the ropes, and I went, what? And then he stopped anyway. I'm like, okay. I'm like, guys, fucking make up your mind. I just spent 31 minutes trying to figure out when the match is going to be over, and here you are still trying to tell me if a heel turn's coming. Stop it. I can't take it. I need a break.
Yeah, no, it was. I'm glad they've punted that a little bit down the road.
Well, and that's the thing. They can keep coming back to it. Like, this can burn as long as they want to burn it, so.
Yeah, well, and some people thought that they lit the fuse on the MJF thing a little early. But with this, I think it could come at any time. But it goes back to what you and I have talked about before. I don't want it to be a full heel turn for Adam Page. I just want him to break away from them and do his own thing as like a maverick. He doesn't have to be a bad guy, right?
Yeah. And not to mention that, when you have the Bullet Club, or at least in this case now, the Elite, this has been a story that's been told over the span of a decade, if not longer, has taken place in various promotions now. It isn't just a New Japan thing. Like, WWE has used it to an extent by having AJ and Gallows and Anderson being called the Club. Finn Balor has had a match with AJ, and they've two-sweeted at the end of a match. There's been so many callbacks, and now in AEW you have a portion of the Bullet Club that had just left, moved to a new promotion, and are still acting like the Bullet Club is still a thing. They still talk about guys like Marty Scurll. They still make a little bit of referencing to what goes on in Japan, although they're trying to keep it down for the most part because I guess they're still in a bit of we don't like you right now mode. But
Right.
this is not a story that as soon as one guy turns heel and one gets a win over the other, the Bullet Club story is dead or the Elite story is dead. This can go forever as long as these guys are still in the company, and especially if they keep bringing new faces into it.
Is there anybody that was like super core to their story that isn't with them now, maybe other than Ibushi? Because yeah, like you said, I know Anderson and Gallows and AJ are in WWE, but is there anyone that's still in New Japan that would
In New
join them
Japan,
at some
other than
point?
Ibushi, no, unless like in some crazy shape or form that Jay White or somebody would leave, but I doubt that. It honestly would be Ibushi from New Japan and then Marty Scurll, who's now in Ring of Honor and NWA. Those are the only two
Right.
guys that would make like a big impact because they still have those ties. Like, unless some crazy thing happened and Gallows and Anderson or AJ, although I don't think AJ because he might retire before that happens. If they jump ship and went to AEW, you could continue that story, but I think at this point it's just Ibushi and Marty.
Right. No, that's fair. One other thing I wanted to talk about with this match, although I've mulled it over a bit since last night. I wasn't initially sure of where they placed it on the card because it just absorbed so much energy and burned the fucking house down. And you're only an hour into the show, and there's still 4 or 5 matches to go. But you know what? Now, having had time to reflect on that a little bit, and having talked to you about it a little bit, like if you put it any higher up the card, it only would have disproportionately affected the later matches that much more, right?
I mean, the only thing I would have said at this point is that they should have put Pac and Orange Cassidy after this because it would have been the only match to keep the fire going.
Right.
Because as we move on to
Yeah.
the next match now with Nyla Rose and Chris Statlander, there is nothing those two could have done that could have saved any grace in that. Even if they actually, because Chris was sick. As I said at the top of the show, Joe being our Chris Statlander, Chris Sandler was reportedly sick going into this match, and it showed because she was very slow. But I don't think that if these two were at full capacity and did the best match they could come up with, I still think it wouldn't have mattered because they were that dead and there wasn't any investment. Because this is a match that only had like a week of building.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, it's disappointing though because it's Statlander's second title shot in a row. That, well, this doesn't end ambiguously, but it ends with perhaps less of a good match than we know she's capable of having. And obviously, I wanted Nyla to make an impressive debut in her first defense as the champion, but she had a cool entrance and she was dressed up like Deadlock and or Deadshot rather, and. Yeah, you like you're saying, you could tell in some of those spots it was kind of stiff. Like the Beast Bomb off the ropes at the end was pretty stiff.
Well, and like I was
She
talking with that spot with Darby and Sammy almost falling off the same corner. We had a near accident with I think it was just a superplex where Statlander tried to get something off and she was slipping, and I think Nyla's weight was she was having trouble supporting. And it's just another one of those cases where I'm watching being like, oh man, like what is going on tonight? Like there's a lot of guys that are nearly fucking having accidents in that corner.
Yeah, and then one highlight for Chris at one point was when she did the handstand to get off the ropes to avoid Nyla's big diving knee drop move.
Yeah.
So that added a bit of color to the proceedings. But yeah, you're right. This wasn't as good as it should have been. It wasn't as good as I wanted it to be. But in the meta narrative that doesn't matter as much, knowing that like almost nothing could have followed that anyway.
I mean, it gets my guard up a little bit just because after the title match with Riho, of me being like, oh, okay, so Rose can go. Now she's had a match with somebody else. Granted, Chris is sick, so there's a little bit more to it. But like, this is where I get my guard up again because I've had my problems with Rose. So if the next title match ends up being another really not good one, my guard's going to go right back up again and be like, here we go again with the women's matches. So I'm worried that we might be seeing another decline again. But my hope is that this is just a one-off. It's a problem due to maybe sickness plus maybe injury. Who knows? But it's one of those cases that it might just be a thing where it's like, well, there's nothing they could have done in this case. And like you said, the fact that it followed arguably the best match the company's ever put on, there is no getting past it. There's just not much they could have done.
No, you'll wear that unfairly one way or another. Mm-hmm. And on your other point, I don't think that'll be the case, but it remains. Nyla's better against opponents that are smaller than her. And Statlander's obviously almost.
I mean, that's the thing too, because she can look a lot more dominant in that. Whereas somebody who is actually, I think Statlander's even taller than her, so it does lead that look of, okay, well, she can't really manhandle anymore. So what can she do when she has to fight somebody her own size? And at least from what I've seen so far, I mean, we thought we might have got a match with her and Aja Kong at one point, but that kind of just never happened. So I don't know. Like, I'm still curious, but so far after the first real match where she had like someone she could pick on that's her own size and it didn't quite go so well, I'm worried that maybe she doesn't have the same amount of chemistry. Because it also could even be a chemistry thing too, that maybe her and Statlander just didn't work together very well. But we won't know until we see a second, third, maybe even fourth title defense, assuming that she goes for a while.
And I think she will, at least to Double or Nothing.
Yeah, so, I would assume so anyway.
So we will revisit that.
Yeah, for sure. Next, I guess we're going to go to MJF against Cody. And I was right. No physical contact for the first few minutes. MJF kept dodging and avoiding. And I'm glad they did that because it made sense.
And he kept rolling out of the ring. That was amazing. Yeah. This was the match I was the most excited for because I fucking love MJF. And I wanted him to win this so badly. And I'm glad that he did. But this wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be, honestly. And I know that, like, he's not the most technically sound wrestler.
He's better than people give him credit for, I'll say that.
Yeah, and you know what? I actually thought that Cody was not as good in this as he usually is sometimes.
You think it was the tattoo?
Oh, my God. Well, this is the other thing, right? Is that, like, for the first 10 minutes of this match, the debate in my living room wasn't over the quality of the wrestling. It was as to whether the tattoo was real or not.
Well, the other part that I was going through, and I didn't really say it to my friends because they didn't really know the group very well, but I listened to that live showing from Downstate and went, is this why these guys don't go on tour very much? Because they don't. Because they sounded like trash. And I was excited because I wanted to hear that song live. And when I listened to it, I'm like, this guy can't fucking sing.
Yeah, no, that was brutal. And, like,
he sounded like me in the car singing that song.
Yeah, no, like, wrestling doesn't have a great history of those things live anyway. But that was... Yeah, no. Especially because it was like a big match, right? I know it's technically from the standpoint not the biggest one Cody's had because he's had a title shot, but it left me a little lacking in that, like his entrance wasn't as good as it normally is.
Yeah, it was a bit of a struggle, but the fucking tattoo. My God.
Would it looked
I don't mind the tattoo. I just think it's either too big for his neck, so if they could have downsized it, or put it on your fucking shoulder, because now if he wears a suit, it's going to look fucking weird.
Yeah, no, it's going to look real fucking stupid. I have no idea what he was thinking when he decided to do that. It's, I think I texted this to you last night, but imagine if, like, Dusty Rhodes in 1987 got, like, Dream tattooed on his neck or, like, the American flag tattooed on his neck or something like that.
Well, and like I said, I don't mind neck tattoos. It's just in Cody's case, like, if you're gonna be the guy who's all business at points, having the like what he wore at the C2E2 convention, which I was telling you guys about in the chat when we were before Revolution talking about some of the things he was giving away. He's wearing the salmon suit, and all I can think of now is him in that suit with that fucking tattoo on his neck, thinking, like, how stupid is that going to look?
Yeah, I don't know what he does at this point, whether he backpedals and gets it laser removed and just tries to pretend it was all a joke, but yeah, I don't know. It was dumb. But I wasn't rooting for him anyway, so I couldn't say.
I guess it all works out for you, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, they had there's so much great heel work rolling out of the ring, running away, stomping on the foot, biting on the toe, doing the chicken shit thing where he's crying and asking him to forgive him.
There's a lot of beer wasted in this match, too.
Yeah, and then, surprisingly, the one thing that I certainly didn't see coming, I mean, you thought you would see color on the card at some point, most likely in the main event, but MJF busted open pretty badly.
I didn't even know how he got busted open.
Yeah, it was like when,
it looks like when it happened, it was when he just took the drop kick to the outside.
Yeah, but he takes the enziguri or the dropkick or whatever it was, and then there was a spot near the steps a minute later, but he's already bleeding by then.
So I was sitting there being like, "What the?" Because he had to have bladed. I'm thinking, "What are you blading for? There was no reason to get busted open yet."
Nah, but he rocked it well. It was a good look. I also
what did Cody do? Did he have a finger, like a toenail that fucking clipped you?
Yeah, that's right. Put some foots. It's like from Wild Wild West, where you have the knife in the boot.
Like it was very weird for a second. I mean, not as weird as Arn taking a bump, which just freaked me the fuck out.
Yeah, and Wardlow took a pretty good bump too, but obviously still an active wrestler. So
yeah, at least Arn, like, I'm like, oh dude, like just be careful, man. That's spine. Come on now. Oh, actually, not to mention his neck.
Feisty.
Fuck.
Yeah, and Arn got feisty at one point with the chair, threatening to rock some. No, it was a good match. And it had the ending I wanted it to. It kind of came out of nowhere, right? You didn't really see him get the ring this time. It wasn't as telegraphed as it normally is. But the good thing is he's done it enough times before that you obviously knew that's what had happened.
The fans had no idea. You could tell that there were a lot of people in the crowd being like, "What the fuck just happened?"
Yeah, what? He just won with a punch and a slow pin.
Yeah.
But sloppier than I thought it was going to be, but it achieved the end result that I wanted it to.
Well, my only complaint there would be that Cody hit 2 crossroads, and MJF still had enough presence of mind to grab the ring and hit a punch. I'm like, I don't know, guys. I don't know.
Yeah, I felt like they shouldn't have gone there with it. Or not 2, anyway. You know
like, it would have made sense if he hit a crossroads, was tired for a little bit, then he let it sit for a moment, and then finally went up to go grab MJF. He gives him like a bit of a backhand. Then he takes an extra couple of seconds to show the ring off so people know what the fuck's happening and then clock him. But because it happened so fast and after 2 crossroads, it felt like it wasn't done in a way that could have been more sensible and logical to a fan base that, especially in the live crowd, is not going to notice that shit right away.
Yeah, or like if you're going to do the 2, like have a finish where, like Wardlow saves you by putting the boot on the ropes or something, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Anyway, it wasn't as good a match as the build-up to it had been, and I don't take any pleasure in saying that because it was probably the match I was most excited for.
At the very least, the end result is what we expected would happen and should have happened. So we may not have liked the way to getting there, but at least we hit the destination we wanted to get to.
No, exactly. MJF went over Cody. His heat is protected. It's intact. He carried himself well. That audience fucking hated him. It was perfect.
Well, yeah, I'd hate anybody who had a shitty looking spray tan like that.
I liked the ring trunks. Those are the best looking trunks he's had, the red and black.
Well, did you notice his robe too that he came out to?
Yeah, exactly. The robe with the Burberry pattern was an inspired touch.
Then you actually don't know the hook of it. So way back when in WWE, Cody used to wear a robe like that, and people used to make fun of him all the time of it because where does the robe stop at the front? Right where the crotch is. So people used to make fun of it. So now MJF was wearing that robe.
Oh, that's funny.
I kind of remember he was
wearing that when he was like dashing Cody Rhodes. Yeah,
yes, you'd be correct.
That is a funny.
So there's a little extra to it. So you can see he's mimicking as much of Cody as he can. Like he does the kiss the ring. Now he's doing the rope stuff. So he's doing even these little callbacks and things. All I'm just waiting now is for him to take a sledgehammer to a chair now just to piss off Cody further.
Yeah, I kind of wanted him to win with the double cross because that would have felt more poetic to me. But I knew they had to do it the way. But you're a chicken shit heel. You've got to win dirty. So.
Especially if it's MJF right now.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I'm excited to see where he goes next. Obviously, we haven't seen the last of those two.
No,
but it was the best thing the company has done in the lead up to this event, because it's been building since Full Gear, and really it's been building since New Year's when he laid out the stipulations.
I mean, it's technically been building since he's been a part of Cody's entourage, because everybody's like, well, this guy's a dick. How long is this going to last?
Yeah, no, like it was always preordained it would happen. So it is, obviously with a build that big, you wanted it to be a bit better than it was. But I have to rewatch it again.
Not to mention, this feud isn't remotely close to being over. So
I mean,
there's definitely time to do this in a much bigger case, whether it could even go as far as a lights out match, could go to like another cage match. They could do a different kind of match that we haven't seen yet. Obviously, speaking of which, I mentioned to you in the chat before when Cody was saying, hey, just a heads up, we're going to probably announce tonight, we're bringing back an old match that will probably piss, in quotation, some people off. And I figured out, okay, so they're bringing back War Games. Now it's called Blood and Guts. And I think it's very poetic that they're going to take this match and throw it in as close to New York as possible to really stick that knife in and twist it just a little bit more. I have to wonder, though, what do you think is going to be the two teams for that match? Because I can't imagine it being the Elite now, considering how much turmoil they're in.
No, that's right. So maybe it's the Inner Circle against somebody.
Does Moxley maybe form some sort of posse? Does maybe the Dark Order get involved in something? Do we maybe have something with MJF get fused in there? So like MJF teams up with Jericho or something? Like I don't know, and that's where the curiosity
versus
comes
the
into
Nightmare
play.
Family. That could be it could be like on the other side. Yeah, QT, Cody, Dustin, a couple of those cats against somebody. That's a good question. Oh, and I didn't know this, but my friends that watch WWE knew this last night when they teased the promo for that. But yeah, Blood and Guts is apparently how Vince referred to the AEW style at one point. So they're sticking the thumb in his eye. Too.
So did you see the tweet too that people were making about the Bucks being like, since they put out their new book now that's getting pre-orders, Killing the Business, that they're like, man, do we have to talk to Vince now about copyright infringement?
I didn't see that, but that's good.
But yeah, no, actually, I just had an idea in my head because we were talking earlier. We had a brief hiccup when we started recording the first time, so we didn't talk about this again. We were talking about Spears on Dark with how much trouble he's been having finding partners, and we talked briefly about the idea with him and Tully being together that there's a possibility of a Four Horsemen thing. Could you see now, because it just came to my head, could you see a possibility of a Spears, maybe MJF, Wardlow, and a fourth guy being the team going up against the Nightmare Family as a Four Horsemen against the Rhodes?
I would like that because that would be fraught with the implication. Well, and that's a good call.
And you know what? My brain immediately thinks now, what if that fourth person is Lance Archer?
That would be cool. I would be you having just thrown that out there, I just like that because I like those guys, and I feel like they could all be a good stable together. And
well, not to mention that it's a normal thing for the Horsemen to be in a War Games. It'd be very poetic to have a new quote unquote Four Horsemen as the first team to be the heel team of a War Games match in AEW.
Right, and Spears has the Cody connection off the bat. Obviously, it's gone a bit dormant, but you could resurrect it pretty easily.
Yeah,
no, I would like that. The good thing is we've got. They've got 4 Dynamites to build up to what.
I was going to say, because it's the 25th of March, I believe.
Right. The first night of the night after my 30th birthday. So,
well, then you're getting a pretty nice present by the looks of it.
That's right. The first Dynamite of my 30s will have a big-ass double cage match. That's pretty exciting.
That's going to be fantastic to watch, too. Moving on, so we went from a match that didn't quite have the quality that we thought of to a match that we didn't know what the fuck we were going to get, and we got quite possibly one of the most fun matches we've seen on this company's watch so far. In Pac and
I
Orange
had a
Cassidy.
feeling this would be. Yeah, well, you and I and Joe talked about this we talked about Orange Cassidy as a whole on one of the first shows we ever did, and we talked about the match he's done with David Starr, and there's a bunch of other matches he's done that are available on YouTube, and like when he actually goes, he can really go, and like we've talked about that. So I had a good feeling about going into this, but I was not wholly prepared for the amount of glorious insanity and the amount of high comedy that this was going to produce. Starting right from like his entrance alone, fucking cracked me up.
Hail it! Well, his Titantron was literally nothing. Justin Roberts announced him as from wherever, weighing whatever.
like the laziest pyro you'd ever seen.
Oh, I was glad he was still. Even Gilbert was getting jealous of that pyro.
I like that he kept the Best Friends theme song because I mean he's with them anyway. And I actually just
well, why would he have his own entrance music? That takes work.
Right, precisely. And then we talked about people popping for Adam Page, people popping for Darby Allin. The people were popping for Orange Cassidy, and the amount of people in the crowd wearing denim, wearing sunglasses.
Oh yeah. There was 2 quotes that I saw before Revolution. There was one that Joey Janela made where he was talking about Orange Cassidy saying, look, we have commercials for Dynamite. Orange Cassidy is the only guy on this roster that has his own Dynamite commercial.
Yeah. Like, it's insane.
Yeah.
The appeal that he has, and it's easy, right? Because like people that have watched wrestling for a long time like it and think it's funny, and it's really easy to sell to like casual friends because it doesn't take long to take the measure of what his gimmick is, right?
The most important quote, though, came from a source that the people who hate Orange Cassidy, Jim Cornette, would get really upset about. Came from Tully Blanchard, of all people, where Cody was saying at that same panel at C2E2 that he was talking with Tully, and they mentioned mentioned Orange Cassidy. And Tully said, I don't really know what's going on with this, but all I know for sure is it's getting over. And it's generating people, they're buying shit and they're reacting. And that's all that fucking matters. Who cares if you don't like it? If the majority of the people are getting up and getting out of their seat, which they did several times in that match with Pac, if they're that invested, who cares if it's actually your cup of tea or not? Because you know what? They're going to keep doing it because it works.
Yeah. And it's got cross appeal everywhere, right? Like it's like you said, it's selling merch like crazy. Kids,
someone
love
who's
it.
never watched wrestling likes that. It's fun. Like, again, 4 out of the 8 people that were sitting with me watching this have never really kept up with wrestling. And just watching Orange Cassidy consistently roll away from Pac over and over again, and they're just dying laughing because they're enjoying themselves. It's almost like wrestling can be fun sometimes, you know?
God forbid.
But man, like as an actual match, fantastic match.
Yeah. Crazy offense. He's ridiculously athletic, right? I mean, obviously it started kind of
how remarkably fast he is, too.
Yeah. It started with the kicks, which Pac did a good job of buying into as well, and throwing back some of his own, and then just laid him out. And then, yeah, it was great, right? Like, Pac wasn't taking him seriously, thought he was a fucking joke, then suddenly found himself getting his ass kicked at various points and was like, holy shit.
Man, nobody can sell a DDT like Pac can, I'm telling you.
And that DDT he did where he like flipped up over the top of him and like Hurricane Rana DDT, that was crazy.
Like that.
How good a move that was, and how good it looked.
My favorite one that I've ever seen, I think it was Sami Zayn who did it to an NXT, and he DDT'd him so hard that Pac flipped up to his feet and then face planted like almost like a Ric Flair bump after he'd gone back up to his feet. And I'm like, that's how you sell things like death. It may look stupid to some people, but it really emphasizes the power of a move. And even if it looks dumb, at the time you're just like, oh shit, you're not thinking about how stupid it looks because you're too busy enjoying this match, especially a match that was as fun as this match was.
And they gave it time. Like this was not like a 5-minute shoot 'em up. This was methodical. It had pacing, and it went on second last. Like, you talk about a vote of confidence.
Yeah, to put them on after Cody and MJF, which obviously didn't end up being nearly as good as we thought it would, but if it had been, this still would have been a great match following that. Honestly, they could have followed the tag match, and it still would have gotten over.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to watch it again when you and I are done recording here, just to take in the nuances of it.
Not to mention, you got a little bonus Lucha Bro attention there at the end. I mean,
Yeah,
you only got
so
one kick out of Phoenix, so unfortunately you didn't really get too much of a gimmick for this one, but at least you got your fix.
Yeah. But he hit it this time because that was the move I was saying that he missed a week ago, and then Kenny hit the finish on him. So at least there was some continuity there.
But yeah, Lucha Bros just with the distraction, they take Trent and Chuck out of the equation, and that gives Pac enough time to take him out and then finish him up with the Brutalizer. Fucking great match, quite frankly. Top 3 match on the card. I would put that at number 3 on the show tonight. Or last night, I should say.
Yeah. No, I have a hard time disagreeing with you there, my friend. It might even have been better than the title match, but that's a matter of some conjecture and debate.
Well, I mean, both of them I'd put right next to each other as we get into the title match because, quite frankly, both of them were great for different reasons.
Yes, and obviously for me, but I'll just close with this thought on the Pac Orange Cassidy thing. But that was the best way to do that match. Because he still got super over. He got in tons of offense. It was a great showcase for him on pay-per-view. But the right guy still won the right way, and it protected everybody. So I thought that was very well done.
For sure. And now it leads even more credence to the next time the best friends are in a trios match, that Orange Cassidy doesn't do any of that again. So people don't get that fix every time because you got to keep saving it.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, he's been in the company since say 6 or 7 months.
Since it
No,
started.
since the beginning. Yeah, that's right. Since the beginning, because he was at Double or Nothing. So this is the first time you've really seen him showcased like this. You're right. Like it's a kind of a special quantity. To kind of
Like he's done the dives out of the ring with his hands in his pockets, but he's never gone the flurry of offense that he did in this match. And that's something that honestly, you could even treat him like it's like Finn Balor with the body paint when he only does it for like main event matches on pay-per-view. You can literally have it that Orange Cassidy never wrestles seriously unless it's a big name match on a pay-per-view or something, or maybe the odd Dynamite where like a really intensive match comes into play. But anything else, he's not doing shit.
he's not going to try. Well, I got to tell you, he tried last night, and it looked phenomenal. And then yes, as you were saying it, this is where my objectivity faltered a bit, because obviously Jericho being the reason I came back to watching AEW, that he's 49 years old and I'm 29 years old, and I've been a fan of him since he was my age and I was 9. It all comes full circle. And
What a match!
I thought he could win. I thought Moxley could win, but I was like, at this point, I was like hanging on every move, right? Because I really wanted him to hang on, especially after he had that big epic entrance at the beginning.
I mean, what a match, but I mean, what an unbelievable record that just got broken, eh? Somebody finally broke Jericho's record of being the youngest All Elite World Champion.
I know. It's a sad day. The flags are at half mast in my house.
Yeah, Winnipeg's having a bit of a somber moment right now.
Yeah, no, it was inevitable. There had been some chat about like whether they would put it on Moxley, because then you've kind of put it on two guys that were made in the WWE.
That was literally the first comment I made to my wrestling friends was I literally ran to my laptop and started like half-ass typing on the computer. It's 2 WWE guys in a row wearing the belt. I'd be like, yeah, but they're the 2 most over singles guys in the company that aren't busy doing something else right now. Like, what do you want?
Well, that's what you've got to go with, right? And this was a great match. There was the brawling in the crowd. There's the hilarious moment where Jericho grabs the camera and flips. You can see him flipping off Moxley in the shot. Tons of inner circle interference.
Aubrey channeling her inner Jericho refereeing when she kicked them all out.
Yeah, she did the big sweeping gesture. Although that was, and then as the other 3 are getting ejected, Sammy hits him with the belt.
Yeah, that was a close near fall. Because again, you're conditioned to think that that's earlier. Usually a near fall, or not a near fall. That's usually an end.
Yeah, he had him in the walls early. He busted Moxley open on the quote unquote bad eye.
What do we remember what actually caused that? Because I don't remember how it happened.
So I'm doing a disservice to our listenership, but neither do I.
Like it's the same thing with the MGF one where he just randomly started bleeding. I'm like, wait, what the fuck happened?
Yeah, I thought, and like this is the weird thing. I thought Jericho was definitely going to bleed given the stitches.
I mean, we know that Moxley bladed for sure because that cut was way too clean.
You could see it on his head at the end when he's in the ring.
Yeah, once he took the eye patch off, which
yeah,
what a great moment, because not even the fact that he took the eye patch off, but did you see how the blood was dripping off the eye patch too as he took it off?
Yeah, so. And as soon as he did that, I was like, nah, fuck. Well, this is it. There it goes. Paradigm shift. And then that was all she wrote. And
I thought it might go a little bit longer, but either way, it ended up... It got a massive reaction out of me. I have not yelled at my TV in a while watching wrestling, and that was like the fuck yeah moment that I had that night. And what a way to cap off that show for me.
Yeah, no, I would admit, and it wouldn't shock anyone, I was a bit more morose in my reaction than you were, but... I was happy about it though. It was a good match, and if I think Moxley will be a good champion. He's the right guy to put it on because, like you said, he's super hot, and now you can actually have heels competing for the title.
Yeah, so now Pat can finally get some attention going on. Obviously, Jericho will get a second shot at it. You know it's going to have to happen, whether it's at Double or Nothing, whether they do it pretty soon on Dynamite. Who knows? But I mean, we know Jericho's contracted for 3 years, so it's not like he's going away. So it's one of those things where, in your case, yeah, it's probably a little sad to see his reign end a little bit sooner than I think some thought. I actually thought he would make it to Double or Nothing because I was still sitting there thinking, and this is obviously before the tag belts changed hands to Omega and Page, but I kept sitting there being like, man, there's a great story that could be told here of Omega getting his redemption. Or in the case of him turning heel, it could have been a thing where he fails twice and then that's when it finally snaps.
Right. Yeah, and I've talked about that on here before. There was a lot of chat around that he might go to Double or Nothing. But you know what? I think that,
I mean,
he's
6
who
months
brought
ain't
me.
bad.
No, it's better. And you know what? It was a way fucking better run than they gave him when he was the undisputed champion 20 years ago. It was a way better run than when he had maybe the run where he was champion and had all those great matches against Shawn Michaels was pretty good. But I think in terms of his own creative output and building his own stable and some of the promos, and especially when you frame it in the context that this is him helping build a new company. And, it brought people like me back into the fore after years in the cold.
Well, I mean, here we are, like almost a full year in now, but technically 6 months into television, and we're sitting here being like, dude, I'm fucking all in on this shit. For lack of a better pun, but we're all in right now with what's going on.
Absolutely. I mean, hey, I had never ordered a pay-per-view in my life until last August, and now I've ordered 3 in a row, right? So,
yeah,
and I've bought a bunch of merch. Speaking of which, I don't know if I'm going to get I really like the Guns N' Roses Appetite for Destruction spoof that the Inner Circle has.
I really would get t-shirts, but man, I can't justify $30-$40 for a shirt right now. That's not where I'm at.
Yeah, no, I hear you, but I was thinking about it, but now I'm interested to see. I think they'll keep the Inner Circle around for a bit longer. I don't think it'll break up right away.
I can imagine it even being something that evolves, like it changes, because eventually people get tired of it, and he's like, well, fine, I'll find new friends.
Yeah, or they dump him or something like that, but it would be... Because, if I remember correctly, like the Nexus in WWE had 2 iterations where it was first Wade Barrett, then it was Punk's thing.
Well, the Nexus is a bad example because about 90% of the Nexus at that time were not good enough to be on TV. So.
True, like the actual membership of it weren't.
But speaking of WWE, because I can't help but take shots this week because Super Showdown was a show. As sad as it is to have a champion lose the belt on Revolution, at least he had a good match with somebody younger than him and not like another guy who lost his belt to a 50-plus-year-old guy in 3 minutes.
Yeah, I remember you texting me that the other night, and I couldn't fucking believe that they've quashed the Fiend, which is like one of the only interesting things that they've done in recent memory. All to put over Bill Goldberg. But, hey, I mean, I guess, better late than never, because they didn't do a great job with Goldberg the first time he was in WWE. So I guess this is the reparations package 20 years later. Well,
I mean, I'm talking a lot of WWE on the show, and I'm talking a lot of Meltzer comments on the show. They had a good conversation, Meltzer and not Alvarez. I can't think of what the other guy's name is, but they were talking about how WWE is fucking up repeatedly in the last 20 years of not being able to create stars. Because they keep telling you that whatever the new talent is, they don't fucking matter, because what matters is the old guard, the Attitude Era guys are always the best guys. Because there's a reason why their demographics are always 50 plus, because that's the people that were younger during the Attitude Era and got into that. They haven't, like, as much as I like the Ruthless Aggression Era, the Ruthless Aggression Era didn't get a lot of young kids. The current era certainly has not got a lot of young kids, because apparently nobody is watching wrestling now since that era's gone through. So it's telling us that, at least on that side of the equation, WWE is not doing anything to help their stars. And here's AEW, who in the 6 months of television has gotten a guy who doesn't do anything, a guy who drinks beer and rides in on a horse, and several other iterations of characters that on paper wouldn't make any sense, and here they are being over guys in 6 months of the company.
Yeah, no, I think they've done, and I would be a bit remiss, because obviously it was an Attitude Era guy that brought me into the product, but I do now have tons of favorites on the undercard and around it of people that you can tell are going to be stars, and people that we've talked about, like Darby, Sammy, MJF, the Jungle Boy. There's a clear waypoint, there's a clear through point of where you see who they're building up to be big once some of these initial people, once some of this initial top guard move on.
I mean, honestly, you throw 5 guys. You throw Orange Cassidy, you throw Darby Allin, and you throw the Jurassic Express. And I point to those 5 specifically and say, what do you think WWE would do with those guys? And the answer is, I don't even think they put them on the fucking show. And here's AEW taking a chance on all of these guys, and those 5 specifically are some of the most over guys in the company right now. And they're not even in title hunts.
Yeah, I know. And I mean, this is another thing. I think they need to create a bit more of that infrastructure to have them. But they've had no problem. They've had no problems finding feuds, and they've had no problems putting on quality matches.
Well, and I
I think I
assume at some point we're going to get one more belt. It has to come. Like it's been
I think
asked
it
enough
should.
times now that you have to assume sometime. I would hope by Double or Nothing because having a battle royal for it would make sense too.
Yeah, there's just enough people on the mid card to justify the existence of one.
Hell,
And to create
I
some
was even
feuds.
saying during the Sammy Darby match that like, man, like this is literally the match that we think would happen for that belt.
Yeah, that would be, yeah, exactly. Either of those guys as a champion for that, as the initial champion of whatever that belt ends up looking
yeah,
like
like
would be.
all in all, I cannot stress how much I thoroughly enjoyed this show. Aside from the women's match, which got better as it went along, but like from top to bottom, man, there were no dead periods. Like I never took a piss break during that whole show because I'm like, no, I don't want to miss a damn thing.
Yeah, no, I had to stop. I only missed about 5 minutes because I had to go pay for pizza. But other than that, it was, like you said, a quality show. It's given them so much momentum going forward.
You really hope it puts a rating up on Dynamite on Wednesday. I really hope they get some some
boost.
extra views from that.
We will see. And yes, they haven't really announced anything for Dynamite yet this week, but there doesn't really have to be. They're saying it's the Fallout show, so we will see where the cards land. I mean, the one thing that we do know is that Lance Archer will be there.
I mean,
And that we
they'll
may see-
advertise something like before the show.
Yeah.
They'll advertise like one or two matches, but generally
Yeah,
speaking,
and-
like you're expecting Fallout from all the major matches. You might see the Exalted one as well, like you said, Lance Archer. So there's definitely enough there. And not to mention, I imagine either this week or next week we'll know who the teams in the in Blood and Guts are going to be because they kind of have to advertise it. So
Well,
I
that's-
hope that
yeah,
they do it next week or this Wednesday, I should say.
Because it can't just finalize the week before. Yeah, so that's a good point. So you might see the tease and the build for that at least begin, if not solidify, this week.
But otherwise, final thoughts on this before we call it a show?
Well, like I said, I just want to pay an homage to Chris Jericho, who I think had a phenomenal first run, like the run with the first run with the world title, and I think it's in good hands with Moxley. I liked.
Oh, that's
Moxley's
right. We
shirt.
forgot to talk about the choir.
Yeah, that was an inspired moment. That was such a great entrance. I thought that to myself. I was like, how can you lose when you have an entrance that good? And even Moxley's entrance was good, where he walked in from the street and came in. I mean, obviously we've seen him do that on TV too, but it had.
But
a big
not
fight
from
feel
that
to it.
far out. It was usually like starting in the stands. This time you see the whole damn thing.
Yeah, no. So I thought that the pageantry and the build up of it was very good. The match itself was very good. The ending was. Hey, I think there were a lot of people that were 50-50 on what the ending could have been. That Jericho could have kept it a little longer.
I think
Or
that
it
was
could have
us in a
gone this
nutshell
way.
when we were doing the show last week.
Yeah, so I think we could have seen it go either way. But no, I think that, like you said, this was probably the best pay-per-view they've done in terms of top to bottom quality. It gives them a high hand in charting the course for where they want to go next. And it'll be interesting. I mean, this is the interesting thing about AEW is that the pay-per-views are always about 2.5 to 3 months apart. So it gives you the next one's not till May 25th, the May 25th weekend. So there's plenty of time to set things in order. But to stick to a theme that we've touched on a couple of different times on this podcast, I am still loving the ride on this, and I'm very excited to see where it goes next.
Absolutely. Without question. I mean, for a guy who is very close to being out of wrestling around the time that AEW was starting to become a thing, like All In might have actually saved me from quitting wrestling for a while because All In was just something that when I first saw, I said, fucking finally, thank you. There's something maybe I can watch and just remind myself of what good wrestling can look like in the States. Because, I mean, all I had was NXT, and NXT in doses is good. And this is before, obviously, they had TV. But, you know, that simple hour thing, and the takeovers were always good shows, but a single show every few months is not exactly going to make you stay into wrestling all that well. It's just something almost like you look forward to, like a big boxing match. Now with AEW and having the weekly show and now having these pay-per-views that so far, aside from really the freebies in Fyter Fest and Fight for the Fallen, you've gotten your money's worth. And for Revolution, I don't know what you paid for, but I paid $20 American for it. And if you told me that every show that I buy from now on is $20 American and that's the quality I'm going to get, I ain't got no problem paying that price because that is high quality for that amount of money.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's justified itself. Because I have asked myself that question each time where I'm like, is the card good enough to warrant this purchase? Am I invested enough in these storylines? And the resounding answer to that has been yes, each time. And I have a difficult time imagining that I will feel differently when Double or Nothing is upon us in 2.5 months' time.
For sure. So I think that's going to do it. So hopefully Joe can make it back for the next one. We'll maybe even just quickly prod him for thoughts about Revolution as well when we see him next. But for the time being, that's going to do it for us. So for all of you either watching on YouTube or checking us out through whatever audio format you're using, thanks for checking us out. And hopefully when we come back to you guys next week, we're going to have some real fun stuff to talk about when it comes to Dynamite, including what potentially could be a really, really interesting War Games match. So with that being said, guys, thank you so much for checking us out. And we will see you on the next one. Take care.
Take care. See ya.